The information and views expressed by our host or guests on the Unlock Potential podcast are their own, and not a substitute for professional medical or fitness advice. Always consult with qualified healthcare or fitness professionals before starting any new exercise program or making changes to your current routine.
There's activity and there's exercise. Activity is every physical thing that you do, and exercise has some specific components that make it a special type of activity. Mowing the lawn is an activity, but it's not exercise. Exercise is meant to build the body in a specific, focused way so that it carries over into making all of our life activities that much easier.
Hello and welcome to Season 2 of Unlock Potential. I'm Brian Delaney. Our focus this season is fitness. I'll be joined by Dr. Duvall, who's going to guide us through his protocol for getting into your best shape so we can live our best lives and serve others well. Welcome to episode 1 of season 2. I am absolutely fired up to have you guys here with me. Today we're going to be talking about why exercise, what is exercise, what it isn't, what are the recovery protocols, as well as the body, mind, and spirit. To talk about these things, I could try to pretend like I'm very eloquent or educated, but instead I brought an expert in who you met in season 1. And he's going to help guide us all throughout season 2. Wait for episode 2. It's going to be awesome. But hang with us for this episode so you can learn from Corey while we help you to unlock potential. Thanks for being with us, Corey. Appreciate you.
Brian, good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. A little bit of a different setup than we had last time, huh?
Yeah. Feels good. Home base.
This is your home base. I was in my home base, so I gotta shake it out. Right? So
you spend a good amount of time here.
Yeah, I do. It's my second home. My wife might disagree. She might think it's my first, but yeah, I wanted to have you back in because I think that the experience that most people who are tuning into this are having right now is really similar to the general experiences that both you and I have had in our fitness journey, in our life journey.
Definitely.
And it's being able to be in a position where we feel good, where we operate well, where we relate well and serve well. But I when we first met, that's not where I was. That's not where I was. I had I needed somebody different, and I didn't know your protocol was even available, or even if there was such a protocol, because in my experience, what I had was I had YouTube, I had Spotify, I had podcasts, I had things I had read in books and magazines, and it was kind of like if you had put all those parts and pieces together and all the different sources of people that we can learn from. I was learning how to feel good and be at my best physically from bodybuilders. Imagine that, right? From these guys who are like 6 minutes away from death when they get on stage, dehydrated to a ridiculous extent, and they're built in ways that aren't actually functional.
Correct.
When you can't touch, when you need help wiping your ass, right? It may not be functional at that point.
They're not going to help you move your furniture.
They will not. They will not. They will lift it up once or twice or 3 times, but not actually be able to move with it. And I think movement as a function and as a basic test. Can we move and be pain-free? Can we move and feel good? Can we move and have endurance and energy left over afterward? And my answer to a lot of those questions was, when we first met. And it wasn't just the movement and the exercise, it was the whole thing. It started with movement and exercise, but the reason I got into that was how I felt and how I looked. And I found myself in a place where hormone imbalances had come into the picture. I'd gotten some medical treatment for that, but I didn't feel good. It took away one set of symptoms, but it just brought a whole new set of symptoms that now I was going to have to treat. So I got off that. The other thing is when I was in the gym, taking all this information from all these places and putting it in one box, it was like 4 jigsaw puzzles put into one box, mixed up. And as I was taking the pieces out, I was just kind of mashing them together a little bit and saying, I think this one fits in here.
Make it work.
Yeah, right. So I should do slow negatives. I should have creatine, protein. I have to eat during my anabolic window. Oh, don't pick it up like this. You have to move it like this. You need 6 hours of sleep a night. You need 10 hours. It was a mixed bag. And everywhere I looked, I got a new message. And I was hyper focused on the message. And my only awareness of how I felt was really lacking. And I just knew that was a problem that I needed to fix. When it came to diet, I had followed a lot of different diet protocols and found the yo-yo effect to really be taken over. Because every time I would diet, I would take extreme measures.
Yep.
I would put a lot of stress on myself, and then the weight would come off, and then I would be done with that cleanse or that diet or whatever marketing name somebody wanted to give, calorie restriction. But I hadn't broken any habits. I hadn't changed the way that I lived. And then I would restuff my face.
Yep.
And then I would watch my weight cruise from 190 up to 215 again. And that usually happened in periods of injury from the gym. I had chronic problems with my neck. I had other injuries with my back, doing construction for years, moving in not the best ways, not having a strong core stability, all of those things. And a lot of the ideas you brought to me were so simple, they were profound. And it really allowed me to dump those 4 puzzles out of that one box and put it all in the fire and throw it away. And I had a clear idea that you knew what you were talking about, and I had a clear picture of the kind of results that you had all around you from people who I knew who had achieved these results by, in imperfect but progressive ways, following your instructions.
That's it.
So I am so fired up to have you on here, and really I want to dig around in your brain. I want to dig around in your heart and mine that genius that you have for mobility, for feeling great, for being able to be in your most optimized position, and create a lifestyle around that so it does not change. It doesn't yo-yo up and down. And so fired up to have you here with us and get to the next level with you.
I love that, Brian. That was a great intro.
Yeah.
I've gone through so much of that journey myself. Fortunate enough, though, to have a professional education with it and enough time and enough space to really dig into all those pieces. And then enough people around me willing to put in work from many different backgrounds so that I could see what worked for who, what didn't work for others, and really help them kind of tailor that whole process.
So talk about that a little bit. Talk about your background in education for those people who may have not been with us in our previous studio, in Studio One, right? Talk about your background, talk about your education and how that plays into what you do now and how you help people now.
Yeah. Numerous injuries and surgeries when I was young from being active, but I stayed persistent in wanting to be the physical best that I can be. Went to chiropractic college because of the idea that the body gives us signals of how we can heal ourselves. And I wanted to help people through that process. While I was there in chiropractic college, found out about CrossFit. Now, before CrossFit came along, a big portion of the fitness industry was bodybuilding, like you mentioned, and then long endurance cardio and yoga or flexibility work. And so there were these 3 disparate camps, and CrossFit came in and said, hey, let's mix all this stuff up. Let's bring them together. Let's stop separating everything and start to bring it together. And let's make it in a way that it's good for Olympic athletes, the elderly, and the young as they're growing up. I loved that concept. So I took my rehab awareness, I took my what is the least common denominator and how can we get people started. I did a lot of study and a lot of work with elite performers, professional athletes, to see what their injuries were like and what they needed to keep them going. And then I saw a huge gap that rehab was to get back to very basics of living, and that elite performance was to stay well ahead, but there was a big gap in between there. And fitness needed to fill that gap. And so my goal became, how do I help people from rehab reach their elite performance? And how do I measure when people are starting to fall off their peak performance and catch themselves before they fall all the way to major injury and rehab. And so we had to change the language of a lot of these topics so that people could speak the same language all the way up through. And then we had to teach them how to feel their body and dose themselves so that they get exactly what they need.
I love that. And one of the things that you mentioned in that is that common vocabulary, knowing not only the word, but what the word means. And there's a word that you just mentioned that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and that's the word CrossFit.
Yep.
And if you asked me 5 years ago what CrossFit was, I would say, why are you asking me? Just ask a member. You'll find out that they're CrossFit or a vegan within the first 30 seconds, right? That's the joke. But this idea was like, okay, I'm gonna work out professionally. It almost looked like from the outside. And you, when I came in here and talked to you for the first time, it was in the name, but I did not find too many things recognizable about that. So when you hear the word CrossFit, and with you being having that certification, what does that word actually mean, and how should people consider that for themselves in order to drop their swords and their shields?
That's a good term. So the founder of CrossFit originally said that it has 3 main components. One is variety, enough to kind of change things up so you're not doing the same exact thing every Monday, not doing the same thing every Wednesday, every Friday. It's got functional movements, which means you're using your whole body to move and create effort. And you're looking at what your whole body is capable of, not just specific isolated anatomy as we go through. And the third thing is it's got intensity enough to make progress.
Okay. And something else that I wouldn't have considered is that it's scalable and adaptable for everybody. That's a big piece of what you're saying. I thought that CrossFit was for former injured Olympic lifters and people who wanted to become currently injured amateur athletes, right? And that was my thought about that. But that comes back to this awareness piece that I really had lost in getting focused on form that I'd watched in a marketing video, not an instructional video, but in a marketing video that was trying to teach me how to work out, and the different opinions on that. I was so externally focused that I wasn't even noticing what these movements or lack thereof were doing to me.
That's so good.
So when it comes to, we hear different terms, we hear exercise, we hear movement, we hear mobility, we hear those, kind of break down some of these, some of the simple definitions in order to develop that common language so people can refer to that and use that in a way that's more accurate when they're describing what they're doing and when they're asking for help.
Got it. So the first distinction I help people make is that there's activity and there's exercise. Activity is every physical thing that you do, and exercise has some specific components that make it a special type of activity. Mowing the lawn is an activity, but it's not exercise. Going for a hike and carrying your child in a backpack is activity, but it's not necessarily exercise. Exercise is meant to build the body in a specific, focused way so that it carries over into making all of our life activities that much easier.
That's so good to get that, because for me, there was a period of time where I wore a fitness watch. And if you would have asked me if I exercised that day, I would have looked and would have said, I have 10,000 steps in today. So yes, I did. Right? But what you're saying is I did activity, and by measuring that activity, I fooled myself into using this other word called exercise. But if I were to exercise, that's going to allow me to perform all these the whole sphere of activities that I have to do with being in adequate shape, being in more than adequate shape, and being prepared to do those without having to make a big plan. Like you don't have to get in a fitness regime in order to go out and do an activity. You're not limited by that. So when it comes to that, what are some common mistakes that you see people make in that arena when it comes to activity and exercise?
I think it would be easiest to answer that question by pointing out the 5 pieces that make up an exercise.
That's great.
So exercise should be planned. It's not last minute, head out the door and go do something. You are setting a time and a place, and you're preparing what you're going to do ahead of time. So exercise, whether it's a coach or yourself, you're saying, hey, this is the time it's going to happen, and this is what we're going to do while we're there.
Okay.
So it's planned. It's also prepared. You have taken care of what you need to do so that when you're in that planned location and going through it, you don't have to stop early, you don't have to leave, and within reason, you can stay focused during that time period. Planned and prepared.
I want to stop there real quick when we talk about planned and prepared.
Yeah.
Because no matter how people feel, generally they show up for work, right? They're going to show up for work. They're going to go to work and do the job to earn the money.
Yep.
They know that some days are going to be better than others, right? My biggest mistake was having a different attitude toward the gym. It's like, oh, I don't feel my best, so I'm not going to show up.
Exactly.
Right? And when you talk about planned and prepared, we've set that time aside. We've created this space for us to take care of us so we can fill our cup up before we feed others.
Exactly.
And I just want to take a moment and say that if you're in that position where you are not setting that time aside and you're saying, I don't have enough time, I would agree with you, because as a result of stress and the pull of life on you and the degradation that the body is going to go through when it's not moving on a regular basis with both activity and exercise, you're right, you don't have enough time because you are going to die early. I heard one report this week, the study that they just had put out that said smoking is less dangerous to a person's overall life than not exercising.
Wow. I hadn't even heard that yet.
Yeah, they just presented that study. Go find it for yourself. I can't cite the study exactly, and put in the comments if I'm wrong, because if I heard that wrong, I need to know now. But it's such an impact for people that as compared to someone who does not exercise, someone who does exercise but still has some unhealthy habits along the side is going to live longer on average than the person who has a more sedentary lifestyle.
That is totally true.
It's so crazy. So do you have the time? You better. So you do have the time, right?
A quote that I like is that everybody should spend at least 10 minutes a day meditating. And if you don't have 10 minutes a day to meditate, do it for an hour. Because the work itself is what creates the wedge to give you space. When you haven't exercised, when you don't have free and easy flow of energy through your body, you're slower to make decisions, you're slower to receive information, you're slower to answer and respond to your environment, and that slowness starts to eat up your time.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the lessons you learn, the motivation that you get, the energy that you get from that, we talked about this in the first season, so I'm not going to sit here very long, but it's this idea, this whole thought process when it comes to exercise of I'm tired, I need to rest, right? I'll exercise once I've rested and I have more energy. We have to get the power plant working in order to have energy. Exactly. How is a city going to be powered without the power plant being turned on? This is turning the power plant on. We're going to help you turn the power plant on, and it starts with having it be planned and prepared.
Exactly. And we'll get into a lot of that in the next episode, that how our body feels should guide our exercise.
Absolutely.
Whether we go or not should be based on our schedule and not how we're feeling. You set that time, plan and prepare, and you show up. Then those symptoms are going to guide you. Your body is saying, you need to do this today and not that. Now we're ready for the next thing. Now we're ready for the next thing. We are constantly just getting that feedback to help us recover and create that space. But we don't wait to feel good to get started.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What's number 3?
Number 3 is measurement. Okay. So if we are going to exercise, we are trying to build the most possible physique and capability that we have. If we don't measure what we're doing, we have no idea if we're getting better, if we're getting worse, if we need to adjust things as we go along. So we're planning, we're preparing, and we're measuring what we're doing.
Yeah.
And with those measurements, we're going to compare. And here's where CrossFit can sometimes lead people down the wrong path. Comparison is about what you did in the past and what you're planning to do in the future and what you've done relative to other things. It's about you comparing to you.
This goes back to what I was saying earlier. A lot of times the sources of information are rough, right? For me, who I was comparing myself to, elite athletes. I was comparing myself to the top 1% of 1% that have had a mix of a lot of experience moving their body, as well as supreme genetics. Supreme genetics. And even if my genetics were good, which, you know, we come from potato eating people, so potatoes and whiskey, that's what we do, right?
Got some of that in my blood.
Yeah. So the comparison is off, but if we're looking to make steady progress, I can't look at somebody like yourself and say, well, I'm not as good as Corey, because of course not. The time has not been put in. But if I can make the only difference time, and I like the result, now we're getting somewhere.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. And then last piece is competition. And competition is actually rooted in the reason why we exercise. We exercise not to be first. We exercise not to be better than those around us. We exercise so that we match our genetic potential as closely as we can so that we can best help others.
So good.
And competition is a part of exercise. We are planning, we are preparing, we are measuring, and we're comparing, and then we're competing. And that competition is that you perform each piece to your best in a way that inspires others. That rules out cheating, that rules out cutting reps, that rules out shorting your range of motion, because that's not inspiring to other people. Sitting with your own discomfort and showing up regularly, putting in that work, that's what inspires others.
It does, and it has to be real. And I think that for me is a big piece. And part of the real journey is uncovering those things that have been ceilings for you in the past. And that's part of my journey in here as well. Has been about every 60 to 90 days, I'm sitting on the floor or sitting somewhere and you come sit next to me because I feel like it looks like somebody just stole my dog. And you're like, and I'm like, this is hard. And you're like, yep, it's hard. It's not complicated, but it's hard, right? And it's not that the exercise is hard. It's that whereas before I would experience injury and have physical symptoms of internal complications or disconnects, right? There would be something that was off in my physique and in my body and my mind and my spirit, and it would present physically. Now that we've done this work and stripped all that away, I just want to let people know that they're going to uncover some of that stuff and they're going to have the opportunity to deal with it. And every single time I've been in one of those positions and we've done flexibility work or we've done some other sort of work, what I found is places in my body that used to be storage places for trauma have now been able to open up for potential. They've been able to open up for relationships, for value, for energy. And it's almost if you think about it in your if you have your refrigerator, right? And it's all packed with junk food and you start to take some of that stuff out and you start to put in the things that you want. Now, all of a sudden you have more room for good things and you're actually dealing with the problems that had presented with different symptoms previously.
Exactly.
And to me, that's just been such a wild part of this journey because that's probably been the hardest thing. I can't point to any exercise that's been harder than me getting out of here and just being okay with showing up and doing what I could. And that's something that I want to encourage as we go through these seasons. Don't do what you could yesterday.
Nope.
Don't do what you could at your previous PR or do what someone else can. Do what you can.
Yep.
And that competition piece really does help us to look and be able to, can I run just a little bit faster? Maybe I can get this next person and just like, it creates that level of curiosity that allows you to start to influence possibility that you've never gotten to experience before.
So good.
And so to me, that's a big piece that all 5 of those elements start to unlock. But yeah. What's
Love
next?
That. One final analogy for competition that I like is the tribe would get together. We're all headed in the same direction. We want to eat well, we want to live well, we want to stay safe. And the tribe gets together and they throw spears. And it's not to give a gold medal to the one who throws it the farthest. It's not to give a silver medal to the one who's second most accurate. It's to say, how far can you throw? Oh, he throws a lot farther than I can throw. How does he do that? He's pretty similar to me. I got to be able to throw a little bit farther, and I learn from you. I throw a little more accurately. And you're like, hey, how does he throw so accurate? I start teaching you, you start learning, how do you throw farther? How do you throw more accurate? We're all rising together. It wasn't first place, second place, third place. It was the whole tribe rises up together.
Hey everybody, Brian Delaney here. I hope you've been enjoying our second season of Unlock Potential as Corey and I break open some great fitness advice as well as just other life advice that we know is going to help you and add a ton of value. If you're just a casual listener, soak up the content we're bringing you. It's exceptionally valuable content at no cost to you. But if you're like me and you're like, I want the next levels, I want more information, I want more in depth, I want the extra content, come join us as one of our Patreon subscribers. Support the channel, get to the next level, and unlock your potential. This is just another spot where I think we can downgrade the pressure and upgrade the quality. I think we've created competition into this thing that creates distance between us. And I want to create distance when really competition is a form of connection between people at really the most visceral and impactful, in the most visceral and impactful way.
I love that. We should move into what is a workout?
Yeah.
We know what exercise is. It's planned, prepared, measured, compared, competed. A workout is a combination of exercises that is 30 to 60 minutes of work and recovery.
Okay. Why that time period? Why 30? What's so special about that time period?
It has to do with the number of days per week that you can show up and work out, and what research suggests is healthy amounts of exercise. And it has to do with how long we put in work and what that does to our stress and recovery hormones and the hours that follow a workout.
Okay.
And so that 30 to 60 minute guideline takes in both of those pieces, what we're getting each day and what we're getting each week.
And I know you're going to go into this more, but what counts in that time, what doesn't count in that time, because all of us can be guilty. I walked in here this morning, I was on my phone for 10, 15 minutes this morning. Turns out that doesn't count, unfortunately. Turns out that doesn't count. We'll get more into that. You mentioned stress hormone. I think that this is one of the most talked about, untalked about things. People talk around it, they market to it, but this is a big deal. This was a big deal. This was a turning point for me in my life when I realized that a lot of the exercise that I had done in the past was very directed around intensity alone, not longevity.
Yep.
Not longevity. And I was getting the intensity and I was hurting myself. I was deconstructing myself in the process and I was eroding myself in the process.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to having clarity, simplicity, and awareness in this field, we get to start using that stress hormone for our benefit, not trying to eliminate it, not trying to focus on it, but with the right protocol, it's going to work for you instead of against you.
That's exactly right. So many stress relief protocols are about reducing people's stress. And so many people who avoid stress relief look to overdose on stress. And here's why. Stress hormone feels good. That's when we have the most outgoing, exuberant energy. That's when our body is most free and most fluid, and we're most ready. And that feels good temporarily. And that has a breakdown response on our body in the short term. Then we're going to develop symptoms through that breakdown process. And there are ways that we can bypass that. We can ignore it. We can temporarily prop up with supplements and other things to not feel those symptoms. But eventually that gives way and crashes on us. That's when injury, illness, and burnout occur. But by the very same token, if we then respond by not challenging ourselves, we stay in that low level. We stay in that place where we don't reach our fullest potential because we're starting to turn off or ignore the fuel that we once had that could fire us up. Go ahead.
I want to throw away some of these puzzles, some of these pieces.
Yep.
Here's what I heard you say.
Yeah.
I heard you say that most protocols that deal with stress hormone try to eliminate it. And therefore, when we try to eliminate it, we end up becoming more sensitive, not in a positive way, but in a negative way, and an undesirable sensitivity to stress hormone that then has an impact on our body to tear things down. As we do that, we're feeling those things like soreness, like tweaks, like little things that are going on with our body. What we'll do is when our body isn't functioning properly as the foundation, that stress hormone can happen and not happen, right? It's all a part of the chemistry.
Yep.
What we start to do is we start to put supplements in there. We'll start to take pre-workout. We'll start to take creatine. We'll start to take extra protein. We'll start to really focus on these external pieces that are going to help support us. Even wearing knee braces and ankle braces and elbow braces. You look at some of these people and you're worried what they're going to do, right? They've got so many different things, heart straps, it might as well be wearing safety glasses and steel-toed boots. And so they put all of these things on top of this already unstable foundation to provide something stable in the middle. And as a result, it's going to weaken the actual foundation and your body's ability to actually give you energy in the morning.
Exactly.
Because now when you don't have it and you bring it in from the outside, you eliminate or really restrict your body's ability to create it.
That's exactly true.
And therefore, this centerpiece actually collapses down on that foundation. And you said injury, burnout, and what?
Illness.
And those are the three things that I was chronically experiencing.
Yep.
Get the hell out of here.
That's it, man.
That's awesome.
So when we take a workout, 30 to 60 minutes, but we want to align that with our natural stress hormone rhythm, which is known as the circadian rhythm.
Okay.
Circa meaning along and dia meaning day. We are meant to naturally rise in our energy with the sun and reduce and rest as the sun goes away. And that in a daily rhythm is what we are meant to do. And so when we show up in the morning for our exercise, we start to stimulate that stress hormone. So even if we feel low, even if we feel tired, even if we feel not yet recovered, we want to start to tell the body, hey, this is natural. We're going to do this in the morning hours, and it's going to automatically start that rise at that time of day. Then in the afternoons and evenings, we don't want to bump up for a second session. We don't want to stimulate ourselves to stay awake longer. We want to allow ourselves to drop off, and then we'll rise again the next day. That allows our body to naturally get into its rhythm, and then we get to ride those waves each day as they come and go.
I think when it comes to fitness, one of the things that I found and my journey as I get older and I discover that the idea isn't to beat myself into a pulp. It's not self-punishment. I have to deal with what I have to deal with in my therapist's office so I don't beat myself up unnecessarily in the gym or some other way, right? This is not the place to... This will help you, right? You will be able to metabolize trauma. You will be able to metabolize all that stuff. But what I was doing to myself was breaking myself down rather than building myself up over time. And as a result of that, I would find myself working out at all times in the day, but at the expense of the next day.
Exactly.
And if there was one thing that I'm shooting for at this point in my life, it's well-being. And to me, that starts with having that piece of working in harmony with those natural rhythms that our body already goes through.
Exactly.
Right. It's just like it'd be just like going into a car and putting it underwater and trying to start it. Right. It's just like you're working against the mechanical advantages that are built in.
Exactly.
Yeah. So when it comes to those rhythms, you talked about as we rise in the morning, we're not necessarily going to feel energy, but that is the best time to create energy. We're going to be talking more about that in episode 2. But just walk us through how that works when it comes to exercise.
Yep. So we show up because we've planned and we've prepared for that exercise. Morning hours, 30 to 60 minutes. Now, do we show up the next day? Yes, we show up the next day. And we're going to have whatever symptoms we have from the previous day. And we're going to do whatever exercise our body suggests is appropriate. And then we're going to descend. Do we show up on the third day? Yes, we show up on the third day. As we show up on the third day, we listen to all of the symptoms of the first 2 days, and we take on whatever exercise is appropriate. And then no more than 3 consecutive days before we take a rest play day. So we rest. Doesn't mean we can't move, but we should not plan, prepare, measure, compare, or compete our physical activity on that 4th day.
So it's activity, not exercise on that 4th day.
Exactly.
And the other piece of that is, do we show up the next day? I want to thank you for this and just encourage anybody who's watching out there. Do we show up the next day? Not because we want to, just because we do.
Yes.
You don't need to want to, because we are not going to deny the symptoms from the work from the day before. What we're going to do is we're actually going to become more accountable and aware of those symptoms, and those are going to be instructive. It's not the only thing that's going to be instructive, but that is definitely a piece of the mixture. So let's not deny ourselves by not showing up to the gym, or when we get there, denying that we still have symptoms from the day before.
Exactly. That's beautifully put.
Yeah. When it comes to recovery, right? Because you talked about, you've got this 1, 2, 3, right? You've got this thing that is in there, and you said it's a recovery day, right? Why didn't you say rest? Why isn't that just my day to sit on the couch? That's my binge day. That's like, these are common terms that we hear a lot of times. What is recovery, and how does that work to benefit this whole process?
Good. So we'll start with how the mind affects the body, and then we'll move into the recovery protocol, which is how the body can guide the mind.
Awesome.
So all of us know that we can do a little bit more than what our body thinks it can do. You can definitely, if you've ever spent any time in the gym, get to a point where you think you might have to quit and do a little bit more.
Yeah.
You can definitely feel exhausted and tired from the day, see your child about to fall, and sprint over and catch them. You know that your mind can take your body to places it doesn't think it can go. And therefore, your mind can take your body to some really bad places. It can break you down in that short term so much that it doesn't build you for the long term.
Wow.
And so it is incredibly important that we use that with intensity and focus on those 3 days, and then we allow it to check out so that the body can do whatever it wants to do on that 4th day.
Awesome. And when you say whatever it wants to do, what are some of those things that you focus on, not only on that 4th day, but even after the workout, that help us make sure that we're showing up with a great opportunity to be aware, to be accountable, but also to get that power plan even a little bit better, right?
Exactly.
To grow the power plant, to help that work better.
Yeah. So our mind gets signals from all of the tissues of our body on a constant basis. And we need those signals to be running fast and clear.
Okay.
Hydration, which is water and salt, form a barrier on the edges inside and outside the nerves that allow those signals to be faster. And so on a consistent basis, we are hydrating in order to get the signals more and more clear about what the body wants and what the body needs. Now, from our exercise and from our daily life, we're breaking tissues. We're exposed to viruses and fungi and bacteria, and our body's immune system is constantly battling those things, taking out the infectious agents and taking out the toxins that they brought with them. We need to wash all of those tissues away. If we don't wash away the damaged tissue, if we don't wash away all of that old bacteria that we've got in there, if we haven't washed away any of the infectious agents, then they're going to increase our symptoms. So we have a daily rhythm of making sure we hydrate well, which starts with drinking half our body weight in ounces of water each day. So if I weigh 200 pounds, I drink 100 ounces of water each and every day. If I weigh 130 pounds, I drink 65 ounces of water each and every day, consistently and steadily.
That's really great. And I hope you caught that, because again, we're taking what seems to be complex, we're making it super simple. Just take half your body weight, drink that in ounces per day.
Yep.
For me, I was always told, you drink water until your pee is clear. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that idea?
That's half the hydration question. When we drink water, it's got to get into our gut. It goes from there to our bloodstream. It's got to go from our bloodstream to where our tissues are and wash all of those tissues. Then it goes back into the bloodstream, and then it processes through the kidneys, and we pee it out. When that happens, it's a nice steady yellow color. But if we drink a whole lot of water, but that water goes into the gut, into the bloodstream, but can't get out to where the tissues are, it doesn't wash anything. Then we start to pee it out, and it's clear or very pale yellow. And what we need to do is we need to help that water get to where the tissues are. Salt is that piece.
Now, if anybody's ever out there has had a big slurp of ocean water, you might be like, is this the idea? At first, it may seem like this is the idea, right? But you've done a lot worse things to feel better in your life than drank a little bit of salt water, right? And when I first was doing it, I didn't know how to moderate it. I was like, just add a little bit of salt until your pee's not clear anymore. At first, I was dumping it in, cruising to the bathroom, just like, If you haven't ever done it before, you'll know exactly what I mean. But this is a total flip on that idea, because before I thought I was hydrated. When I was ineffectively hydrating, salt was what I needed. Not, again, we use a lot of supplementation when the salt that's already in your cupboard can work, and it's cheap, right? It's one of the most common things that's available on earth, and we all have it in our houses most of the time. So
exactly. I'll add to that a little bit. We do want to listen to the signals of the body for how much salt to add. So we're hitting our daily allotment of water. We're drinking that on a regular, steady basis. We're keeping an eye on that urine color, and when it starts to trend towards clear, we start to add salt. How much salt? Enough that the water tastes better. You will notice when you're low on salt, you'll drink water, you'll add enough salt to it, you'll be like, oh, that feels refreshing.
Yeah.
If you are kind of forcing the salt water down, which many of us have done accidentally, the water doesn't get out of our gut into our bloodstream. It stays in our gut. And as it moves through our gut, it's got to come out the end mostly as water. And that's what you experience.
Yes. Yeah. Too much salt. Water didn't taste good. Water didn't feel good either.
Exactly.
And this brings in this awareness piece, right? So how much? Enough until it tastes better.
Yep.
How is that not the opposite of everything that we've heard previously? It can't taste good, right? Otherwise it's bad for you, right? You're telling us it's got to taste better, right? Because your body is actually sending those signals. But a lot of times what we'll do, what I've done in the past is I've had some other beverage that had salt in it, right? Has high sodium in it. And I can't tell you how much better I felt.
Yep.
Was it because of the branded here name until we get appropriate levels of sponsorship? No, it wasn't. It wasn't that. It was the salts. My body needed it. And I found a way to get it, even if it was from a polluted stream, it could still make it work, just not nearly as well as direct to the source.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, but it's not just any kind of salt. So would you mind talking about that real quick?
Yeah. The simplest way is to consider it as sea salt. There's a few different styles. I recommend just kind of mixing it up. There's going to be different trace minerals and different brands where the salt came from, but try to do sea salt, not table salt or iodized salt.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. And then when, this is the other piece, anything else about hydration? I don't want to skip over that.
I'm good there.
Good on hydration.
Yeah.
And listen, you may be an entrepreneur. For me, there were days where I could cruise through, not drink a lot of water, not eat a lot of food, burn myself out, burn my body out for the long term. So longevity was going to be an impossible outcome from the way I was doing it. Give yourself the time. You deserve it. You deserve it. Your family deserves it. Your future deserves it. Just drink some stinking water, right? Get on that. And the second element, and this is kind of in the hustle culture, a lot of the world that I go into, it's like, you don't need sleep. You're going to sleep when you're dead, right? And so I took that on. And I was almost dead from lack of sleep. Like it was bad. I just was half of myself walking around like a zombie, just slightly aggravated all the time for no reason. And it was really hard for me to be positive, focused on anything, any of those things. And I needed so many coping mechanisms just to be comfortable in my meat suit, in my body, as a result of that. I've heard that if you were to just look at it, the person with sleep and the person without sleep, there's a bigger difference there when it comes to their body chemistry than the person who is natural and the person who's enhanced.
Yep.
What do you have to say about sleep, and why do people need to listen to this differently than they maybe listen to other things?
So there's two directions that I'll take this, and we'll keep it at hydration first, and then we'll move into the second step of the recovery protocol. When we are sleeping, we are mostly stationary.
Okay.
But we still need to move food through the gut as we digest it and process it. We still need to move blood through all of our tissues to gather up the use of the day and bring fresh energy down to it. And we need to expand and contract the rib cage to move air. And any sticky areas in the body will inhibit that. So as we're resting and we're peaceful and we're not moving, it's difficult when we're sticky for all of those things to occur. What does the body do? It starts to quicken our breathing rate in order to start to wake us up so that we feel uncomfortable, so that we change positions. Because lunch is over here and we need it to be over here and it's stuck. And we feel uncomfortable and we move. And as we move, that adjusts the guts so that it can keep going through its process.
Wow. Keep
so
going.
Hydrate ourselves, we sleep better.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an important factor. I never knew about that, but what I do notice is when I'm less hydrated, I do sweat more when I sleep, and I do end up having less recovery during that time, and I don't feel rested the next day.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. The next thing I will say is that as we transition from hydration, we then want to focus on getting our bodies out of that stressful state and into a recovery state. And as we drift into that recovery state, it's called parasympathetic.
Okay.
Rest and digest. And there's a section right in the front of our brain that travels through our emotional center, through our memory center, down to our brain stem. And it's at our brain stem where we go, turn on short-term stress, turn off long-term rest, digest, and recover.
Okay.
And breath is the control mechanism right there. So when you focus on your breath, if you breathe faster, you will be more stressed, give you short-term energy, take away long-term energy. When you slow your breath, you turn off short-term energy, you turn on long-term energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we're well hydrated, the next step to recover is getting as much of that rest and digest time as we can.
Love that. Love that. And I think just any of these parts could be put into a full episode. But for me, breathing, number one. I was never taught how to breathe. It seems like such a what do you mean never taught how to breathe? How do you get taught how to breathe? I want all of you who are watching this right now, I want you to take a deep breath. And then I want you to do it again and be aware of what moves. Because most of us have been conditioned for one reason or another, mostly because we sit, that when we breathe, we go like this. And our shoulders move up. Our shoulders move up. And why do our shoulders move up? Because we haven't taught our body actually how to breathe. And when we breathe, it's meant to expand. And so it's not about shoulders up, engaging the traps, getting that stress hormone going. It's about just keeping your shoulders down and allowing your rib cage to expand, allowing your diaphragm to expand so that can massage the other organs in your body, because that's what's actually going to calm you down. When we're taking breaths at the top of our lungs and not getting down into that deeper part, we're just creating more need for more oxygen because we're almost doing it right. So we'll dig into breathing in another episode, because I think unlocking your breathing is really unlocking your potential. It's unlocking your brain and your emotional centers so that you can be present right here, right now.
Uh-huh.
It's a huge deal.
So we'll move quickly past it saying, hydrate well. Expanding the breath allows it to slow. And as it slows, we go into that more recovery-based longevity state.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's great. That's great. We're going to dig in on this very next episode. And I want to encourage you. This time, it was a lot more about talking. We're going to be doing some instruction as well as some demonstration so that you can be here with us. Here's the good news. If you look behind us, what you'll find is there's not a lot of equipment. This whole season is about simple. This whole season is about unlocking what's been locked up unnecessarily, and that starts with you feeling better. And we're going to help you do that in this very next episode. We're going to dig into the different kinds of exercise, and we're going to give you a couple of tips that I know you're going to be telling all these people, hey, did you know this? You're going to be sharing it just as if you were a CrossFit member trying to teach about your first CrossFit class, right? And I know that by hang with us for the first 3 episodes, you're going to be hooked for the rest of the season, because if you find out what I found out, you're going to be able to demonstrate the ability to be skillful when it comes to moving your body, feeling great, and serving others. And I look forward to being on that journey with you. And I know, Corey, you do as well.
Most definitely.
Awesome.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Unlock Potential. For exclusive content, make sure to subscribe to our Patreon. Follow us across all socials at Brian Delaney, and visit our website at thebriandelaney.com to shop our gear and see what's coming up next.